What if I told you the thing that you have been waiting for to finally move on is the very thing keeping you stuck? Hello and welcome. You are listening to Her Selfish, a podcast for those who are growing, healing, and transforming into the best versions of themselves. I am your host, Catherine, and thank you so much for tuning into today's episode. So I thought, and I pondered on the thought of how so many people wait weeks, months, if not years, for their closure. And whatever their closure may look like, some people's closure may look like an apology, a text back, an explanation, that one last conversation, the truth. But life doesn't always provide neat endings, and life sure as hell does not always provide closure. And so that's when it all clicked for me, that closure is so overrated. But before getting more into the topic, I wanted to talk about the myth of closure. I feel like I was misled. I feel like we all grew up believing that every story gets a conclusion. Every movie gets an ending. Every movie ends with answers. But in real life, that's just simply not the case. And that's just not being realistic, because sometimes people leave without explaining why. Sometimes that apology will never come. And sometimes the person that inflicted the most pain on us will never truly see or understand the damage that they actually caused. And so that was when I was like, you know what? How much of life are you going to be putting on hold, waiting for the permission from someone else to move on or to heal? And that is giving so much power to someone else. Like, okay, go and move on now. I'll text you back and, this is your closure. Absolutely not. Why? And then it just led me to think, why do we crave closure? Why do we seek closure? And I kind of feel like humans crave certainty. We naturally seek it. Unanswered questions make us feel uneasy. Unanswered questions make us feel uncomfortable. And we just think if we understood why, it'll just take the pain away. But I hate to break it to you, but sometimes understanding doesn't always remove the hate. Sometimes explanations does not always satisfy us, and some answers create even more questions. And I just wanted to bring up this example of someone that I knew, and her and this guy were totally vibing. And I mean, they were going out and they were pretty consistent, but then he just was not into it anymore. And when she asked why, because she felt like the vibes were off, he thankfully was like super honest with her and was like, honestly, I'm just not feeling it anymore. I just don't think that, we're compatible. And I just don't really think that it's beneficial for me to keep pursuing you. And he was really cool, nice, and honest about it, but she did not take it well. I'm just going to be so real. Like, she did not take it well. And when she heard those things, immediately she was like, well, how come? What did I do wrong? What did I say? Or are you seeing someone else? What is it about me that you don't like? Or how come I'm not your type? And sometimes some things are just better left unsaid. Take it for face value. That's all that it is. I'm not your type. Thank you for letting me know. That's all that it is. But we are human, and we all kind of, when we don't want to be too emotional, we tend to be more logical. So we want to get answers from people. But sometimes those answers will never be enough for us. So take that L with grace and just move on and accept it for what it is. But sometimes when we don't accept things for how they are or take it for what it is and get our own closure for ourselves, there is a dangerous side for that closure, or dangerous side for waiting for that closure. And sometimes when we wait for closure, waiting can be an excuse for never moving forward. And I mean, I hate to admit this, but I was definitely a victim to this. I waited years for an explanation. I waited years for an apology. And, you can replay conversations endlessly in your mind over and over and over again. And you also even end up stalking social medias looking for clues and reasons why. And you can keep those emotional ties to someone who's already moved on. But the longer you wait for closure, the more power you give away. Healing becomes dependent on someone else's actions. For what reason? Honestly, for what reason? And because we were all misled to believe that closure comes from another person, that's what we're waiting on for, right? But if I'm being so honest, there is no waiting. Closure is something you create. And I remember when I was that person that was waiting on the closure, waiting for that apology, when I felt like I was done wrong and I was waiting. First of all, that closure, that apology never came, because a lot of people that inflict pain and like, they will never understand it or take accountability for it. So I was just sitting there waiting, so, but then it just clicked that closure is a decision, not an event. Closure is something that we ourselves choose to do. You do not need a mutual understanding to move on, to move forward. A mutual understanding between you and somebody else? No, that feeling comes from within you and nobody else. You don't need an apology to heal. You don't need that final conversation. There are so many ways for you to create your own closure. And sometimes, like I said before, when people give you their closure, sometimes it's just a bitch ass, it's just a bitch ass explanation for them to cut your ass off. Like sometimes whenever someone does us dirty, they're just not a good explanation sometimes. There's never going to be a good enough explanation. There's never going to be a timely apology, and sometimes people are not going to take that L and apologize to you. And so when you create your own closure, accepting what happened without needing the answers. You do not need the answers to accept what happened and to move on and to move forward. Okay, I feel like I've said that in so many different variations, but it's because I cannot express it enough that you need to focus on the experience that was taught to you, and also just stop revisiting the wound. I feel like that is so much easier said than done, but sometimes the closure is realizing that that person, that situation was a lesson and not your forever. But after accepting closure for what it is, no matter what that looks like, moving on really is not about forgetting what happened. Moving on means making peace with what happened and really choosing your future over unanswered questions. There's so much power in seeing the lesson that was taught to you. Because like they always say, the people that come in your life are either a lesson or for a lesson, a reason, or a season. And I think that's the saying. Moving on with your life sometimes it's going to look like making peace with the fact that you're never going to get that closure from whoever did you wrong. The closure comes from you, but closure is peace. That's what closure is. We all want peace. We all want to feel at ease, and choosing peace, choosing to move forward. That is your closure, not whatever the answer was, however someone wanted to apologize to you. The closure that happens and takes place is moving on, moving forward, putting a close to that chapter, putting a close to that season of your life to move on and move forward. And who the fuck says you need permission for that? From who? From the person that did you wrong? And honestly, 9 times out of 10, the person that did you wrong is fucked up. So why would you seek that much power from someone who did you wrong? Make that part make sense. The closure comes from you. It takes a lot of patience and understanding and God, to see that peace. It takes a lot of power, and it's easy to give in to the hate and the bitterness and just walking around this person did me wrong like this, so I deserve that. It is so easy to do that, but it's so much harder to choose peace. But what do you want more? That's what you want to ask yourself. If you're going through this currently, what do you want more? A half-ass answer to whatever someone did to you, or peace? And peace knowing that you gave yourself that peace, gave yourself that closure. Okay, and honestly, like I mentioned before, whenever I felt done wrong, I feel like the bigger person by choosing peace and by understanding that some people are just never capable of reaching that amount of maturity to apologize to take accountability. So I was like, you know what? I'm going to give myself that peace and that power that I don't need their bitch ass explanation, their bitch ass half ass excuse, like, for whatever they did. There's no amount of words in this world that can ever take back the damage that was done to you. So why wait for it to come from someone else when you can give yourself that closure and give yourself that permission to heal and move on and move forward? So with closing out this episode, there is one question I want to ask you. And that question is, what are you still waiting for closure on? Like, that's me asking it, but I want you to ask that question to yourself, because this week, okay, I want to challenge you in that this week, I want you to stop waiting for the apology, the explanation, or the text. I want you to decide that the healing no longer requires participation from the person who hurt you. I do not know what happened to the audio, but I was closing out the episode. Anyways, I wanted to conclude this episode by again reiterating that closure is overrated, because the truth is your peace was never supposed to be in the hands of someone else's. Well, yeah, that concludes today's episode. I really truly hope that you got something out of today's episode. And really, if you were able to master this and practice this in your day-to-day life, I promise you will see a huge change in your self-peace. So with that, please feel free to follow me on all social media, everything across the board on TikTok, which I'm very active on, Instagram, and YouTube is at Her Selfish Podcast. So yeah, if you also feel like you need to reach out to someone for any advice, please feel free to also do so as well. I always check my DMs on both TikTok and Instagram. But yeah, that's the end of today's episode, and I'll talk to you guys next week. Bye.